Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com. Good evening and welcome to Jenna Ellis tonight. So as the pro-Hamas students and other bad actors continue to terrorize college campuses across the country, Columbia University earlier today announced that they are canceling the campus-wide commencement that was going to be held at the end of this term. House Speaker Mike Johnson swiftly issued a statement saying this: President Shafik and Columbia University administrators have displayed a shocking unwillingness to control their campus. They've allowed outside agitators and terrorist-sympathizing students and faculty to rewrite campus rules and spew vile anti-Jewish aggression. Now, thousands of students who've worked hard to achieve their degrees will not get the recognition they deserve. Because it is abundantly clear that President Shafik would rather cede control to Hamas supporters than restore order, Columbia's Board of Trustees should immediately remove her and appoint a new president who will. Our once great universities desperately need strong moral leadership now more than ever. So this coming as the social media X account In Wokeness posted that in 2023, Columbia University received approximately $1.2 billion of federal funding, which raises the question, why is Speaker Mike Johnson calling for the Board of Trustees to essentially fire the president of Columbia University and hire someone else instead of calling for the defunding of Columbia University? Representative Mike Johnson and some of the others on the Education Committee, for example, are calling for that, but I would love to see Congress do more with their power of the purse. Meanwhile, this opinion piece came from Town Hall today. Why do leftists hate Israel? It's not what you think. Joining me now is the author of that piece, Scott Morefield, who is a Town Hall writer. Scott, thanks so much. And I think this is a great question in the midst of these protests. It's not what we think. What is it?
Well, most people probably think that they hate Jews because of just your traditional anti-Semitism. And this is coming from the left. And I kind of take issue with that because while you do see some, typical anti-Semitism, like historic, coming from really far elements of the right, and maybe like Louis Farrakhan or some of that stuff on the left, these protesters typically, and I'm not defending them, they're clowns, but at the same time, most of their what they're saying, there's plenty. If you look closely, there's a lot of Jews involved in this. And so they're really careful to differentiate, oh, we're not anti-Semitic and we're just against Israel. And there is a difference, because if you're anti-Semitic, you don't want Jews as a part of your movement, and Jews wouldn't be a part of your movement typically. So I don't think it's that. What I do think it is historically, of course, Marxism and Bolshevism has always been about the class struggle, right? Like low income versus high income. And they've abandoned that over the last few decades, and they've replaced the class struggle with race. It's all about race to them. So I think that because they're not getting up in arms about any of the African conflicts, they don't care about, they'll say they care about Ukraine, but they're not occupying Colombia over Ukraine, right? They don't care about all the Christian persecutions going on across the world. Why would they? But they don't. But they do care about this. And I think it has to do with the fact that Jews, as mostly white people, they're basically being scapegoated by the left and put in the place of anti-colonialism, just every aspect of their hatred for white people. I think that it comes down to just traditional leftist anti-whiteism, and that's what they're getting up in arms about. So if a European country were doing this to a quote-unquote brown country, it would be the same thing. It's just this is Israel, and they're majority white. They're a successful country in the middle of basically a lot of really backward states, failed states, and trying to have some sort of a civilization there. And I think that the left hates that, and that's really the root of it.
That's really interesting because we saw during the BLM protests, for example, that it was all about the anti-white sentiment in America and this narrative from the left, and saying that, along with cultural Marxism, that the oppressed class, of course, was any minority or people of color, and that white people collectively should apologize for being white. So what you're suggesting is that this is just the next iteration of more of a race warfare than it is just classically a Marxist oppressor versus oppressed conflict.
Right, right. It's about race to them. To them, white is an evil. White people, or whiteness is responsible for all of the historical wrongs perpetuated against people of color, the victim groups, the classic victim groups. So it's no longer about class, it's about race. So yeah, they're white. Most of these liberals are white themselves, but they can get an absolution from that by renouncing their whiteness, um, and basically trying to rid the world of quote unquote whiteness in their view, which is just kind of code for Western civilization, really. But it's easy for them to go after just white people. So it's not that, and I think kind of the right gets it, some aspects of the right gets it wrong too, because they just see it as, oh, the maybe it's because Jews are religiously like God's chosen people in some denominations, and I don't really even see that as being the root of it. I just think that it's because they're white. It's because of who they are and what they're doing in Israel. It's the color of their skin, and it's also the success that they're having over there, and it's just classical envy. It's envy based on race.
Well, this town hall piece is really worth reading, and in just about the last minute or so that we have with you, Scott. So, how should Congress have responded? Because it seems like this whole Anti-Semitism Awareness Act was much more for optics than anything substantive. And if what you're saying is true, then maybe Congress should have looked a little deeper to have a better statement that was getting to the heart of the issue, not just kind of going along with the Columbia protesters' narrative.
Yeah, what I don't like about even a lot of people on the right, including some things even DeSantis has said, which I love him, he's fantastic, but some of the things that he said about this and some things coming from the right is, oh, we don't like these people because they're seen as anti-Semitic, or the right sees them as anti-Semitic. So it ought to be we have freedom of speech here. So anti-Semitism is bad. Yes. But at the same time, they have the freedom, if they are anti-Semitic, even if they have the freedom to be that. They have the freedom to be anti-Zionist, whatever. But what
And we
they
got
don't
to
have
end
the
it
freedom
here,
to
Scott. But really interesting piece. And yeah, the way to combat bad speech is always with more good speech, not in cutting off anyone's speech. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Throughout history, there are clear moments that define our nation's path, and now you can own a piece of that history. I'm thrilled to announce the official Newt Gingrich contract with America coin from our friends at Legacy Precious Metals in partnership with Speaker Gingrich. This limited edition 1 ounce, 99.99% silver coin commemorates the historic victory in 1994 when the Republican Party, under Speaker Gingrich's guidance, took control of Congress. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin also symbolizes the transformative political platform that led to the landmark achievements like the overhaul of the U.S. welfare system and the Balanced Budget Act. This is a limited edition coin that will sell out. So whether you're looking for the perfect gift or you want to own a piece of history, act fast before they run out. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin is more than an investment. It's a tribute to honest government and America. You can order it online at newtgingrichsilvercoin.com. That's newtgingrichsilvercoin.com, and use promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, to get $10 off your purchase. Go to newtgingrichsilvercoin.com now. So, how has the anti white narrative also infiltrated and is connected with these university protests? Well, Jeremy Carl, who is a Claremont Institute fellow, has written a brand new book with this headline: The Unprotected Class, How Anti White Racism is Tearing America Apart. Tucker Carlson endorsed this book and says this: How has our ruling class gotten away with attacking the majority of Americans on the basis of their race? The answer is scary, and this outstanding book explains. So Jeremy joins me now, and yeah, this seems like a really important topic that I think a lot of conservatives are shying away from, because then it seems like we'll just be called white supremacists. But you're taking it head on.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I took it on, Jenna. Thanks for having me on. It's just that I think people are skittish about this topic. I will point out, much less skittish than when I started to write this 2 years ago. And that's actually been the really encouraging element, is I think people are realizing that the problem is getting severe enough that the only way out is through. And so we're beginning to have a more real conversation, and I really welcome that.
Yeah. So this book, and I think the title is so apt, The Unprotected Class, because it seems like literally any other way that you even want to identify, much less your immutable characteristics like, race and sex. I mean, and sex, yes, is immutable. We can't just change our gender anytime we feel like it. All of those things are protected by the federal government, except for the white male. Why is that?
Well, absolutely. And Jenna, you're an attorney by trade, and so you kind of understand the concept of protected classes. And I think the kind of funny thing is that in theory, white people should be covered under the protected class kind of notion around race, in the Civil Rights Act. But in fact, what we find in practice is that they're discriminated against quite actively, and really people are sort of scared to speak up against it, particularly for white men. They're kind of lowest on that totem pole, but really for any white person, the last thing you want to be is white. And it's one of the reasons why you see people who can't identify any other way on a sort of formal job interview or university application. That's what they do.
So, what's the solution here then? I mean, if we are in this framework and this narrative from the left that is cultural Marxism, which of course divides things between the oppressors and the oppressed. And so, in their framework, and we saw this with the BLM riots of 2020, we're seeing this now in the campus protests with, Israel versus Hamas. They want to frame this as, we've decided who the oppressor is, we've decided who the oppressed are. And in their narrative, white people categorically are always the oppressor. So how can we possibly, and I say we because I am white, how can we possibly be protected if in their view, we are always the oppressor and have to categorically apologize for being white? How do we change this narrative around?
Right. Well, they're not going to change their narrative. I mean, this is one of the reasons that I wrote the book, because we need to change our narrative. And it's not, the book is not about whining to the referees or saying, hey, we're victims, or woe is me. It's understanding that this ends exactly at the point in which white people decide that they are not going to tolerate that type of second class citizenship. And they simply call out our political opponents on that. And I should say it's not going to be just white people. It'll be with a lot of non-white allies, just as the original civil rights movement had a lot of non-African Americans involved with it. So, it comes from having the self-respect to kind of say no. And then also we need to be armed with the facts. And that's why I really wrote this book. And in fact, despite the sort of provocative nature of the subject, it really is just a just the facts ma'am type book. I've got almost 1,000 references. I really took out anything that sort of smelled at all of overheated rhetoric. And I just try to present in the course of 11 different inner chapters where I talk about everything from white flight to crime to Hollywood to healthcare to the military. I sort of show how institutionalized anti-whiteness has infected all of these different areas of society and why we need to change things.
And this is a great book, and I can't wait to read it. And this is not at all what the original civil rights movement was about. And to be, in the words of Martin Luther King Jr., basically colorblind, and to see people for their merit, not their skin color. And yet we do see this huge racial divide in America, specifically anti-white, that is tearing America apart. Is there hope when you see the future generations that are on these college campuses that are trained Marxist and they're perpetuating this anti-white racist narrative?
No, absolutely. And I know you just had a guest on talking a little bit about the the protests on campus, and I think they're really interesting because some of the anti-Semitism that we're seeing is, maybe it's traditional folks from Arab countries who have anti-Semitism kind of that's in their cultural background. Some of it may be a little bit of old line anti-Semitism, but I actually think that most of the anti-Semitism that we're seeing is downstream from anti-white racism. And that is to say, the Israelis are seen as white, Jews are seen as white. Now, if you've been to Israel, kind of that's factually a problematic claim about the Israelis, but we'll leave that aside for a second. They're seen as the people who have the resources. They're the oppressor class. The Palestinians are the occupied people. They're the oppressed class. And it's, as you noted, Jenna, this Marxist sort of rhetoric around oppression and oppressed and oppressors and white people and non-white. And I think so much of why you're seeing particularly these nice looking, white middle class young ladies who are in these protest camps, it's not because they've turned into raving anti-Semites, but it's because they've been taught to hate themselves by the educational establishment.
Yeah, and facts never matter to the Marxist left. They just want to weaponize any of the oppressed and the oppressors to perpetuate their hysteria and ultimately to tear down Western society. Because I agree with you. I mean, this isn't just that a lot of these young women, especially, or any of these students are necessarily rootedly anti-Semitic or even anti-white. It's just that this is the next iteration of cultural Marxism. That whether it's BLM yesterday or it's pro Hamas, pro terror today, it's all about to push their Marxist agenda. And so so what should be the response from conservatives rather than buying into what Congress did, unfortunately, with this Anti-Semitic Awareness Act? I mean, it's just, to me, that was such the wrong call. It's playing into their narrative. How can we message better?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I've actually argued in the book a little bit that we need to carefully have some level of social justice, and I use that term a little bit in scare quotes, but civil disobedience of our own around some of these anti-white racism, and we need to do that carefully. But I think ultimately we have to really rebel against the sort of narrative that they're pushing on us, that they're saying that somehow we are a problem, that America is inherently oppressive, that our history is inherently oppressive. I have a long chapter in the book where I kind of talk about history. I talk about how our monuments are being torn down. And originally,
and we got to leave it there, Jeremy Carl, but the book is titled The Unprotected Class, How Anti-White Racism is Tearing America Apart. We'll be right back. Well, friends, you might have heard that Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of their box stores or shopping channels the way that they used to. They've been part of this cancel culture, so they want to pass along the savings directly to you by having a $25 extravaganza. I love that word, extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a one-product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, some you may not even know about. To get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out their $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows are just $25. MyPillow sandals, also awesome, only $25. Their 6-pack towel sets are $25. And brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. For the first time ever, the premium MyPillows with the all-new Giza fabric, just $25. And orders over $75 will receive free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna, or call 800-564-8475 today. That's 800-564-8475, or go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Jenna. Well, turning from cultural Marxism on college campuses to woke corporations, this exclusive coming from Breitbart, that 71% want Disney to end the LGBTQ agenda as the brand is in freefall. Polling proves the Disney grooming syndicate's brand is on life support with a pathetic 46% favorability rating. In a virtual tie, 45% view the Louse House unfavorably. Obviously, this is an opinion piece. Those numbers would not be all that great for a politician. They are death for a corporation. The reason for this is obvious. Rasmussen discovered that 71% want Disney to cease grooming small children. In an exclusive to Breitbart News, Rasmussen reports polled 1,255 adults between April 21st and 23rd and found only terrible news for what was only a few years ago one of the most universally beloved brands in American history. Joining me now is Walker Wildmon, who is the Vice President at the American Family Association and host of At the Core on American Family Radio Network, where I also host Jenna Ellis in the morning from 8 to 9 Eastern. Walker, it really is sad to see that Disney, with its main base and main consumer being the family and the nuclear family, parents who actually have kids, that they have gone deeper and deeper into this kind of woke worldview. And I think these numbers are accurate because everyone that I've talked to, and I live in Florida, a lot of us go to Disney regularly, and everyone wants to see Disney returning to wholesome, family-friendly content. Are they going to listen?
Yeah, I hope they do listen, and they really need to for viability's sake, right? Just purely from a business perspective, Disney must wake up. Not become woke. They're already woke, but they must awaken, if you will, to what's going on. It's very sad, though. Walt Disney must be rolling over in his grave. I mean, this is a brutal survey from Rasmussen that Breitbart is exclusively reporting on, where not only has the approval rating, if you will, or the favorability rating dropped down to like 46% compared to 77% approval or favorability rating in 2021, but now 71% disapprove of the ideological war that Disney is waging on America's families. So this is a wake-up call to Disney, their corporation, their board of directors, and their shareholders that they need to get back to family-friendly entertainment, or there's not going to be a Disney in 50 years, or at least it's not going to be near what it once was.
Yeah, so well said. And my parents who grew up in California, I mean, they went to grad night at Disneyland. I mean, my family has grown up with Disney, watching some of the old classics, going to Disneyland and then Disney World. I mean, it's really sad to see some of these things that are now the progressive woke agenda of Disney, when it used to be, and we all know Walt's vision was to make it a family-friendly place that he could bring his own daughters. And so to see them pushing past all of that, is there enough of their shareholders that will actually care about the corporation's interest and the bottom line, even if it's just the value of their revenue, more than they care about this really, really vocal minority that's pushing the LGBTQ agenda?
Yeah, I do think there's light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. I think there's a little bit of optimism here. I mean, their very own CEO has said in the last 6 to 12 months that basically he said at an interview at a meeting that they need to be less political. They need to be less divisive in their stances on the issues of our day. And we saw that specifically in response to what happened in Florida last year, the battle over the legislation to protect young people in their public schools, that the left, of course, mischaracterized. But Disney took a beating over that. I mean, it's a hugely unpopular position that they took, and they were criticized rightfully so. So I think Disney has gotten the memo to a degree. Now how far they're going to act on that and how more towards the middle or neutral they're going to go, that's to be determined. But this is a major issue that Disney is going to have to address from a profitability and a reputational standpoint. And the question is, what do you want Disney to do? That's what viewers are probably asking. What do you want Disney to do? Stay out of the political and ideological fights. I mean, just provide clean, family-friendly entertainment. Get all the LGBTQ alphabet nonsense out of your entertainment. It does not belong there. And I think things are trending in the right direction. I just saw a report that the LGBTQ activist groups are very upset because the number of characters are actually reducing. They're going down in these different shows and series. So I don't know whether that's organic or whether people and these producers are just over the whole LGBTQ stuff every time you turn the corner. But that was a positive sign. So we'll continue to track it.
Yeah, that is a positive sign. I think everyone, myself included, was wondering what they were doing when they started wading into this cultural war, especially through that statement that was condemning Governor DeSantis and the Florida legislature's parental rights and education bill, which I totally agreed with. And, Disney has the right as a corporation to make statements, but whether those statements are wise and whether they should be engaging those battles or they should just be a company that provides family-friendly content, I think is the question now for Bob Iger and the CEO that returned, and especially as he's looking to hand over the reins to someone else in the company in the coming months or years. And so for conservatives, there were a lot of conservatives that really pulled back, sold their stock, refused to go to Disney or to support that. It seems like Governor DeSantis's war, now that the lawsuit is over, the war is over, and he's playing nice with them, and he's saying, let's do business in the state of Florida. How should conservatives respond when Disney is making better decisions, maybe not fully good decisions, but at least it is, as you said, trending upward?
Yeah, I think consumers are going to have to make up their own choice on where they shop and what they purchase. We've done occasional boycotts over the years, but we only do one boycott at a time. And right now we're boycotting Target over their bathroom policy from 2016. But consumers are going to have to make up their own mind. But conservatives, if you own shares, you need to be at the table. You need to be voting at these shareholder meetings, letting your voice be heard. And when Disney goes woke occasionally, you need to speak out against it and let them know that you're upset as a consumer. So we have to be active, we have to be vocal, and we have to be wise where we spend our money. And we have to be at the table letting our voices be heard.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that AFA Action does really well in terms of taking the opportunities to inform shareholders of their rights. And, a lot of people who just sold off their shares and their stock lost their vote and their voice at the table instead of using that to an advantage. And, one of the things as someone who has, invested previously in the Disney company through, part of, some of their things there, I try to use my voice and my dollars to say, let's put this toward all of the positive instead of just boycotting everything, so that if Disney is a company for the bottom line, it can see that family-friendly values are the things that are funded more. So Walker Wildmon, going to hold you on to the next segment to talk about something else when we come right back. Throughout history, there are clear moments that define our nation's path, and now you can own a piece of that history. I'm thrilled to announce the official Newt Gingrich contract with America coin from our friends at Legacy Precious Metals in partnership with Speaker Gingrich. This limited edition 1 ounce, 99.99% silver coin commemorates the historic victory in 1994 when the Republican Party, under Speaker Gingrich's guidance, took control of Congress. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin also symbolizes the transformative political platform that led to the landmark achievements like the overhaul of the U.S. welfare system and the Balanced Budget Act. This is a limited edition coin that will sell out. So whether you're looking for the perfect gift or you want to own a piece of history, act fast before they run out. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin is more than an investment. It's a tribute to honest government and America. You can order it online at newtgingrichsilvercoin.com. That's newtgingrichsilvercoin.com, and use promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, to get $10 off your purchase. Go to newtgingrichsilvercoin.com now. And we're back with Walker Wildmon, who's the vice president of the American Family Association, to talk about a legal action that AFA is involved in, along with the National Religious Broadcasters Association. And this headline coming from a recent public statement: NRB files petition for review of FCC workforce data collection order. Christian radio operators challenge Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC's, recent order to reinstate EEO, or Executive Order Form 395-B, and require upload to online public inspection file. From Washington, D.C., so this is what the statement said: the National Religious Broadcasters, or NRB Association, and one of its members, the American Family Association, or AFA, have filed a petition for review of this FCC Form 2418, which reinstates the Form 395B collection and disclosure in the Fifth Circuit. So, Walker, those are a lot of form numbers. Maybe you can parse what this action is exactly about.
Yes, I'll break it down in layman terms. This is about publicly reporting your employee hires and your employee statuses with the Federal Communications Commission, specifically as it relates to sex, race, religion, and other factors. And what this is getting at is this is basically DEI for the FCC, to put it in layman's terms, as far as what the issue here is. And so we joined with the National Religious Broadcasters Association to sue the Biden administration just this past Friday in federal court. We filed the petition in the Fifth Circuit because that's what jurisdiction we're in. But the suit is asking the Fifth Circuit to review and basically strike down this FCC rule that they put forth that is going to require our organization and hundreds and even thousands of broadcasters around the country to participate in this diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. And in essence, what they're trying to get at here, what the commissioners are, which are run by, of course, majority Democrat commissioners, because the president gets to choose the tiebreaker there, or the winning vote, if you will, with the 5 FCC commissioners. In essence, what they're trying to do here, and this is according to their own public statements at these hearings, is they're trying to publicly shame organizations and broadcasters that aren't participating in DEI protocols when it comes to hiring practices, because these files will be filed publicly for the public to review. So, for example, Human Rights Campaign could review AFA's employment file to see how many non-binary employees we have at American Family Association, which thankfully is 0. Also, they'll break this down by ethnicity and say, well, you guys only have so-and-so people that are from this ethnicity, so you guys must be racist, or things like that. So that's what this is getting at, is incorporating the Marxist diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense into the broadcasting arena. And so this has been struck down at least twice in federal court in past decades. And so we're optimistic that this will be struck down again in the Fifth Circuit.
Yeah, I can see the Southern Poverty Law Center headlines writing themselves as you're talking, Walker. And, especially for American Family Association and the American Family Radio Network, which is a Christian nonprofit and designated so. I mean, this also seems like it would be a violation of the Free Exercise Clause, because this is specifically a Christian network. And then Salem Media, where this show is right now on the Salem News Channel. These types of requirements and opening the door for the Human Rights Campaign to put some of these restrictions and call these things out, I mean, it's fundamentally going against the right of Christian broadcasters specifically.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in essence, it's a form of forced speech and forced disclosure that's completely unrelated to the FCC's primary purpose and mission. I mean, this is not the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. This is not the Department of Labor, and I'm not saying it would even be legal in those spheres. But this is the FCC. I mean, their primary purpose is to regulate the airwaves, so we don't have pirate radio stations, interfering with people's legal signals that they've licensed from the FCC. And that's their primary duty. But now you have Biden's administration now in majority control of the FCC. And this is very, very problematic. But we're very confident in our legal filing and our petition here because of previous rulings on this. I mean, the courts have made it abundantly clear, both in the 1980s and the 1990s, that this is an unlawful rule that has been put forth. It's been struck down before. Lord willing, it's going to be struck down again. But we have to fight back against this, because we know it's abundantly clear that the Biden administration wants to weaponize the government, including its agencies, to go after Christians and conservatives around the country.
Yeah, I hope the Fifth Circuit strikes this down and doesn't even have to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. But, mentioning the broader spectrum of the Biden administration weaponizing each of its agencies against conservatives, I mean, we're talking in this instance just about the FCC, but there are plenty of examples of conservatives and Christians that are being targeted by the weaponization of government. So where do you and the American Family Association see some of the other battlegrounds lying?
Yeah, this is our second time to sue Biden, and possibly will be our second victory with Biden within short order. Our first suit was against the shop mandate, if you will, against the I think it was a Department of Labor mandate regarding OSHA, and that applied to us. They were trying to force American Family Association, a nonprofit association of churches, to force all of our employees to get these experimental COVID shots. So we won in the Fifth Circuit on that. We defeated OSHA on that mandate. So this is our second suit just against the Biden administration in recent years. But we've seen the Department of Justice be weaponized against conservatives. I mean, we still have January 6ers locked up without a trial. These folks haven't even had a trial. They've been in jail for 3 to 4 years with no trial. Very, very sad. We've seen the IRS weaponized under the Obama administration against conservative groups and liberty-minded groups. So these iterations of weaponizing the government against people who are political and ideological opponents has really picked up steam in the last decade or two. But we have to fight back and really dismantle the deep state and the bureaucratic state. I'm hoping that's what we'll be able to do in the next few years.
Yeah, and this is such an important reminder, Walker, that this isn't just about the people who are on the ballot. This is also against the DC and swamp bureaucrats that are lifers, because there's so much that is being weaponized specifically against conservatives and Christians. So in just the last 30 seconds, how can people get a hold of AFA Action and all the great work that you're doing?
Yeah, you can just visit our website, afaaction.net. We got multiple divisions there. We're fighting all around the country to advance Christian conservative values at the state level and the federal level. So that's afaaction.net. It's an important battle, Jenna, and we got to be in the fight for our country.
Amen to that. And I'm so grateful that AFA, Salem, NRB, and other organizations are fighting these battles. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. And finally tonight, we turn toward all things 2024 election. And I don't think in recent American history there's ever been such a brazen attempt to influence and outright buy the goodwill of young voters. So if you were, like me, one of the Star Wars fans out in America and you celebrated May the 4th be with you, Joe Biden invited Luke Skywalker himself, actor Mark Hamill, to the White House for a very cringe moment. Watch this.
May the 4th be with you, always.
So Mark Hamill also posted his resounding endorsement of President Joe Biden. And this also coming as this headline from Fox News shows that Joe Biden is still trying to influence young voters. Biden's student loan bailout is to buy goodwill with your hard-earned cash. The latest White House effort would boost Biden with a $13.5 billion bailout of student loans. Joining me now to discuss is former NYPD and Republican strategist, John Cardillo. And John, this seems, this is so obvious, this attempt by Biden. He's using all of these kind of washed out celebs to try to influence young Americans. But I think the student loan thing is a lot more brazen to use actual executive policy to influence young voters.
It's so preposterous. I mean, the young voters even know who Mark Hamill is. The guy's 72 years old. It's like the 81-year-old guy invited the 72-year-old guy. He was going to bring in that Bing Crosby fella, but he found that he died a few years ago. I mean, this is preposterous. Does that move any needles for anybody? I mean, come on. Do you think Biden really knows May the 4th be with you? The entire thing is just, it's horrible. And then Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, kept doing the May the 4th be with you thing and the ensuing presser. It is cringeworthy. It's really the only word for it.
Yeah. And, and this isn't the first time that the Biden administration has tried to use social media influencers. We all remember that exceptionally cringe moment with the guy who was the TikTok influencer that pretended to be the White House intern and come in and he had like the long nails and all that stuff. And
Yes.
That I don't think won over any voters at all. So, what's their move here? Is this just something where they think that all of these washed up celebs and, like the fundraisers, like with Lizzo and some of these other people, Stephen Colbert. I mean, do Democrat young voters actually care about this stuff?
Well, Jenny, you ask a good question. So all kidding aside, what's the strategy, right? What's the calculus? And I think this is Obama, right? Obama, we know, is calling a lot of the shots. Biden is cognitively shot. Obama is the only president in recent history to set up shop in D.C. Everybody else wants to get out of D.C. Obama sets up shop a few blocks from the White House. And so the use of celebrity worked very well for Barack and Michelle Obama. It really did. It won over the young vote. But it doesn't work well for Joe Biden. So it's like they're trying to replicate the Obama pop culture engagement model with Biden, and it's failing miserably. I mean, when Hamill got up on the podium, he looked like the deadbeat cousin that does drugs with Hunter Biden, who snuck into the who snuck into the briefing room and stood up there. The entire optic was very weird. If we had an honest national media, they would admit the optic was weird, not swoon over this nonsense. But again, I think this is Obama inserting what worked for him into the Biden administration, and optically anyway, it's failing miserably. And no, I don't think it's going to convert any young voters.
That's a great point, that it did work well for Barack Obama, because he was
Yeah.
kind of this, chill guy. They framed him as, the person that everybody wants to kick back with and have a beer with. But that's just not Joe Biden. And so they're trying to force him into this Obama motif that clearly he's not. And I think Babylon Bee had the best headline. It was something like Mark Hamill gets up and talks to the Galactic Empire about how great the Emperor is doing and endorses him. And it's like, this is exactly, for those of us who do know Luke Skywalker, that's exactly not what Luke Skywalker and the Jedi whole motif would stand for. So it's just clearly ridiculous on so many levels. But all of the celebrity nonsense aside, going back to that Fox headline where Biden is clearly calculated with the policy that he's implementing heading into an election year. I mean, this isn't something that, for one, he actually has the ability to do through executive order, but it's such an obvious play to buy votes essentially from young people who want their student loans forgiven. Shouldn't Congress do something about that, or maybe somebody, file a lawsuit?
Yeah, I think Congress should do something about it. I think tremendous pressure should be put on the corporate media to be honest about this story. And the Speaker of the House, Johnson, should be screaming from the rafters every day about this, how it's unconstitutional. Look, this is where Republicans always fail. And you and I have had this conversation online, offline. Republicans are incredibly reactive. They're not proactive, right? They don't put lawyers on the field. They can see the same problem begin to manifest 100 times, and then that problem come to life, and that problem destroy them, or really be a thorn in their side. They can see it coming, and they refuse to be proactive and get in front of it. They're always reactive with their messaging, and if you're explaining, you're losing. So Biden goes out to young voters with this preposterous schema to pay off every penny of student loan debt, which, as you note, might not even be legal. And the Republican Party just sits back and says, who's going to pay for it? Instead of going on offense and attacking it on the merits, the legality, the constitutionality.
We'll write a strongly worded letter, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And in the last 2 minutes that I have with you, John, speaking of reactionary and snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social earlier today, in the midst of this Democrat who in Texas who has now been indicted, and the Republicans are hopefully thinking, oh, maybe this is a seat that we can flip. And Trump is defending this guy, and he said Biden just indicted Henry Kohler because the respected Democrat congressman wouldn't play crooked Joe Biden's open border game. He was for border control, so they said let's use the FBI and DOJ to take him out. This is the way they operate. They're a bunch of DC thugs, and at some point they will be paying a very big price for what they've done to our country. Crooked Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. Is this kind of like the enemy is my friend strategy? I mean, what in the world is he doing defending this guy who is indicted on bribery schemes?
Exactly. I mean, smart messaging would have been, they booted Henry Cuellar because he was another corrupt Democrat. Let's flip that seat red with somebody who'll actually protect the border. Great move, Joe Biden. You're finally calling out corruption among your own Democrats. Your son is next. That would have been the tweet. That would have been the truth. Instead, he's siding with the Democrat against other Democrats. What does he think? It's going to help him? It's not going to help him. He should have learned that. So again, terrible miscalculation, another bad personnel call. And there was a golden opportunity to call all Democrats corrupt and call to flip that seat, and Trump dropped that ball.
Yeah. And it's so frustrating how Republicans are missing the messaging points overall. And now with all of the Republicans that have to go along with Trump's messaging, I wonder if anyone else will call this out. But John Cardillo, thanks so much for joining. That's all the time we have for Jenna Ellis tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night.